Nike CEO Elliott Hill confirms that Caitlin Clark is working on her signature shoe and logo, and that it is set to come out. It's about bleeping time. So this has been called the biggest marketing fumble in history. And I mentioned in a previous video, I did work for marketing agencies, and I worked for an agency where Nike was our client. So I know how on top of things that Nike is. And this is one of those things that I personally just did not understand, because the excuse was that it takes all this time. And I do understand how it takes time, but LeBron James, he had his shoe in his rookie year. Steph Curry with Under Armour, he had his shoe, I think, within a year. So I'm not sure what the difference is, and there definitely could be a difference because production, I know nothing about shoe production. If anybody does know anything about shoe production, feel free to enlighten me in the comments. But what I do know, I know Nike and I know marketing, and they are like on it. But let's get into this interview with Nike CEO Elliott Hill and see what he had to say. So it looks like this comes from Kickfinder. The source is Fortune magazine.
We had Caitlin Clark here today.
Caitlin Clark this morning.
I think you saw that. So she was in yesterday working on her signature shoe that we'll launch, and we're working on her logo and her design of her logo.
She signed an 8-year, $28 million endorsement deal with Nike in April of last year, making it the
8-year, $28 million. They completely ripped her off. LeBron James's, I actually forgot how much it was, but it was like so much more than that. I'll look it up and I'll get back to it later in the video. Steph Curry's is more. Wemby's is more. This is $28 million for 8 years is nothing. Anyway, I digress.
largest sponsorship contract for a women's basketball player. What was the motivation behind that, and what impact do you think it'll have on women's sports, certainly on the WNBA?
When we were running just basketball, we never got to the women's opportunity. But by having this small team that's focused on women's basketball, it unlocked, we believe, opportunities for the game of basketball, but also in product.
They didn't unlock anything. Nike should have been following the trend. It's not, I don't know.
Becomes an opportunity to grow the overall marketplace by inviting more and more girls into the world of sport. It is an area that we'll continue to invest in, and we see tremendous momentum right now.
So yeah, apparently LeBron James's 7-year deal was $87 million. And I wouldn't expect Caitlin's to be on that level. I think now it would definitely be more like on that level, but before she had come into the league and shown that she can keep up and exceed the expectations and show what kind of a following she actually has and how she is just such a generational, once-in-a-lifetime player, I get why it wasn't 87 million, but 28 million, that's a joke. So funny thing, so Steph Curry actually would have been with Nike too, and they lost out to him, to Under Armour. So sometimes Nike just fumbles the bag all over the place, because I mean, imagine having Steph Curry with Nike. So apparently it goes, Curry was a Nike athlete long before 2013. His godfather, Greg Brink as in Cameron Brink, yes, works for Nike. I guess he still works for Nike. And fun fact, Nike has signed 68% of NBA players, more than 74% if you include Nike's Jordan brand subsidiary. And it accounts for 95.5% of basketball sneakers on the market. So the way that Nike lost out on Curry was the August meeting took place on the second floor of the Oakland Marriott. Famed Nike power broker and LeBron James advisor Lynn Merritt was not present, a possible indication of the priority or lack thereof. Instead, they had this Nico Harrison guy representing Nike, and in the pitch meeting, according to Steph's father, Dell, who was present, kicked off with one Nike official accidentally addressing him as Stefan, which apparently is a moniker of Steve Urkel's alter ego on Family Matters. That is hysterical. Wow. It got worse from there. A PowerPoint slide featured Kevin Durant's name, presumably left on by accident, presumably residue from the repurposed materials. That is insulting. And I guess, according to what they were feeling, they weren't thinking that Steph would be one of their top tier players. They have Kobe, LeBron, and Durant, who were their top three main guys. If he had signed back with them, they'd be on a second tier, and that's a quote from Steph's dad. And the only reason I'm showing you this is to show you the potential of how big Nike can fumble something like Caitlin Clark. So it's highly possible that back in 2013, Curry wasn't considered cool enough relative to building the Kyrie Irving phenomenon. For these companies, it's imperative that whoever they're selling is defined and distinct. And like it says here, still there were indications of a building. Basically, they were talking about how they never could foresee Steph being as big as he was. And to that point, they say, still there were indications of a building trend, signs Nike ignored. Sound familiar? Which is why when he mentions how he never thought he'd be making women's basketball shoes or at the level that it's at right now, it's just bad business forecasting.
We were running just basketball. We never got to the women's opportunity, but by having this small
That's because you weren't looking?
team that's focused on women's basketball, it unlocked, we believe, opportunities for the game of basketball, but also in product. It becomes an opportunity to grow the overall marketplace by inviting more and more girls into the world of sport. It is an area that we'll continue to invest in, and we see tremendous momentum right now.
Nike.
And I'm not sitting here saying like rah female rights or anything like that. I'm looking at this from a pure business perspective, from a marketing perspective. And when you are in marketing, you look at the upward tick of what's trending. And it had been trending. It had been trending for years. I mean, Caitlin Clark had been like a name that people were talking about for years in college. Paige Beckers was a name that people were talking about since she was in high school. And the ratings had been going up. Even in the WNBA, the ratings were going up. So to not really have your finger on the pulse here just shows like shoddy marketing. And then there's others that believe that they are going into a political space by releasing Asia Wilson's shoe first. And without me being in those meetings as to why or not being able to reference anything, I can't really speak to that. All I can speak to is how big of a fumble it is to not be capitalizing on Caitlin Clark, not so much as a shirt. And again, I am not talking about that poor excuse for an intern designed Rookie of the Year shirt that they had, because this fan base wants it. It is obvious. Anything having her name will sell out. The Wilson basketball sold out before it was announced. All that happened was Caitlin Clark put up an Instagram post saying I think it was going to be on sale at some point, and it was sold out before Wilson announced it. All her Panini stuff like sold out immediately. I tried to go on Panini and get one of those like autographed shirts and stuff, and everything was sold out within 15 minutes. And I hate to go on a rant about this because I'm not the biggest ranter, but I really just don't understand the business side of these decisions. But hey, I am glad to see Nike doing something about this, talking about this. So now it's time to put up or shut up.